We're going to ask each of the three panelists to respond. David, since you have been addressed directly, you'll go first, Susan second, and Brooke will have the last word.
Well, talk about hate speech. The vitriol aimed at J Street is Jewish hate speech. J Street is one of the fastest growing Jewish organizations in America, and I submit it as pro-Israel. Now, two things. If you don't come to terms with J Street and understand where these are coming from, you are dividing the Jewish community. We must learn from them, and I say, all of those people who say they hate J Street, go to a J Street conference, which will be in Washington. You will not see hate for Israel there. You will see members of all political parties from Israel coming addressing it. These are people who love Israel. And a lot of this is ignorance, and we shouldn't tolerate ignorance. Second of all, yes, there is hate out there. And I say some of our Jewish groups have condoned it. When we honor anti-Semites because they're anti-Islamic, because we portray Islam as our enemy, we are condoning this testimony. When President Trump didn't come out immediately and condemn Nazis, and Jewish voices, not the ACM, but Jewish voices were silent, this is a problem. Now, the other problem with state statutes is state statutes aren't defining Israel as the state of Israel. They're defining the occupied territories as including Israel. They are overstepping the occupied territories. If you want to say there are no occupied territories,
everyone please be, you can disagree, but be respectful. And the three panelists are the only ones to make remarks. David, please conclude.
Thank you. The occupied territories are clearly included when you have legislation dealing with things over the 1949 armistice line. The U.S. government policy claims that's occupied territory. World opinion claims this is occupied territory. To claim that there's a myth that there's no occupied territory is a myth, and if we live in a world with myths, people aren't going to believe us, and that hurts Zionism. We have an important Zionist message to give, but we have to be careful about what we say and how we say it.
Susan?
David, there's so much in what you just said. As a Zionist, I'm shocked that you would say that Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem are occupied territories. If you're a Zionist, you wouldn't be saying that. And I am not arguing that J Street U should not exist on campus, but I understand that the president of J Street U just came out with a public statement supporting Linda Sarsour to speak. Now, she is a bigot and an anti-Zionist and an anti-Semite, and yet she is speaking on a panel at the New School about anti-Semitism. That is horrifying, and J Street U's president has come out in favor of that. My final point has to do with the work that I do on campus. BDS has been an abysmal failure, thankfully, on our college campuses. Not a single college or university has divested from its holdings from Israel, and that will continue. But what BDS is doing is dividing students and making Jewish and Zionist students feel like pariahs on their own campuses, and I will give you one among many examples. At University of Michigan a few years ago, yesterday, after years, the anti-Israel group on campus successfully passed a BDS resolution, which the administration has already said it's ignoring. But a few years ago, when this anti-Israel group at Michigan brought up its BDS initiative, things devolved into Jew hatred on that campus. People were called kikes and dirty Jews, and Jewish students and non-Jewish students stayed away from campus for a full week. They were physically afraid to be on their own campus. That's what BDS does on our college campuses. It's anti-Semitic, and it's a divider, and it makes Jewish students feel unwelcome and afraid.
Thank you, Susan.
Really quickly, I want to echo what Susan said. Obviously, BDS is not about destroying Israel's economy. It's all about dehumanizing Jews, which is the precursor to justify violence. That's exactly what we're seeing on college campuses. And our students do not deserve this type of psychological and physical intimidation and harassment. And how dare anybody play down the threat, number one. Number two, J Street is not Jewish. It's a Jew-washed SJP. The leaders of J Street chapters have to be Jewish in order for it to even claim to be a Jewish organization, and we know that's not the case. And it was designed to divide the community. And third and last point is what baffles me is to hear a Jew argue that Jewish civil rights should not deserve protection under the law in this great country. Could you imagine a Muslim or an African American arguing against a piece of legislation that says you cannot discriminate against me because of my religion, my ethnicity, my national origin? Only Jews who argue against this type of civil rights legislation, number one, are themselves responsible for dividing the community, and number two, how are we supposed to ask others to respect us, to respect our civil rights, when we have members of our own community that don't even respect themselves?
What a wonderful hour on law, justice, and the rights of Israel and the Jewish people. I thank each of you for speaking up, speaking out, and for the work that each of you do. Whether I agree or disagree with your organizations or your respective positions, we, the AZM, appreciate the fact that you are able to come here, that we are all able to come here and share the views, even if we don't like to hear all of the views. The last word on this is this. As a community, it is time that we unite, because the divisiveness within our community is indeed destructive, and that's harmful to the rights of Israel, and most importantly, the rights of all the Jewish people. Thank you to our panelists.